Looks like everybody's here. You need to.
Where was the mayor and Gil? Did it not come in?
They're
They were-
standing out there talking.
No,
They
we
were
were
all
having,
wait on,
in.
we're not waiting
I
on
think
it.
he was leaving. wasn't he?
yeah, we were having a meeting before. that.
Okay. All right, at 6:15, we'll call this downtown development order to order. Has everybody taken a chance to look at our minutes from our last meeting? If so, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
I'll
Okay.
abstain since I was absent.
Okay.
And I was absent.
Okay. Did you get that, Tracy? Two. Yeah. All right, moving down to number 3, financial report.
Yeah, we actually had some activity this past month because we paid out 2 facade grants. One of them to Jerry Cole for $2,175, and one of them to Tom Large for $4,521. So that was the facade grants on 119 South Candler and 428 West Montgomery. And then we also paid our insurance again, because apparently they lost the first check for $1,440. So, and I saw you put a stop payment on that first check, so I didn't see it in the, so I guess you already took it out of the, you voided it and,
Well, they're supposed to be.
okay, all right.
$25 wasn't it, Tracy?
$36.
It was $36 to
Okay.
stop the payment on the check that they lost. So the balance in the account right now is $70,114.
Carl, specifically, what is this insurance for? Is it liability based?
It's like an errors and omissions insurance. Is if we screw anything up, we've got insurance on us as a board. That's all it is. It's just to make sure that, and it's all boards have it.
Okay.
Just in case somebody tries to sue us for a decision we make or something.
Who is the agent that we use for that?
Philadelphia Insurance Company.
So there's no local agent as such. It is kind of a
It's just a,
black hole that people send money to.
and they lose, and then we send it again.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Send it next day or two, one time.
And I don't know, we've always used this company, and I don't know, but that's just something that, I think it was suggested by
Stacy, I believe.
Stacy. So, and we've just used them.
Go to her P.O. box, does it?
I don't know.
Stacy, not Tracy.
Stacy, not Tracy.
Oh, okay, excuse me.
Yeah, not Tracy, but Stacy.
Okay, all
Stacy,
right.
not me. It's like they go to the seminary for us, so out, so they're just the best.
Any questions on the financial report? All right, move on down to old business. Reminder of third quarter business visits report due in September. That's yours, Kimberly.
Yeah, we just need to remember that if we haven't done it already for this quarter, that we need to go ahead and visit our people. And then be ready to report at the September meeting. Also, Council Lady Leslie McPherson says that she thanks us for going and visiting these business owners. And she just really appreciates it. That's it.
All right. Discussion of potential land swap. Is that yours, Mr. Barber?
Several months ago, you agreed to expand your boundaries to include the proposed tax allocation district footprint. And that went to council in July or sometime, and they approved it also. So we are continuing to move ahead with that initial project, which is the workforce multifamily development that would sit on the top of the curb of Cleghorn into Anderson in front of the, what we call the Cleghorn lift station, the sewer pump station. So they have the developers have a contract for the property that runs west to east from the north side of Anderson, adjacent to the Housing Authority property, running east in front of the lift station to about where Cleghorn and Anderson bend. And then we, the city, owns the piece immediately adjacent to that where the old Kathy trailer building sits, where there's a playground and a trailer. That was a Head Start program. So we own that piece on up the hill, and I think we also own the piece at the top of that embankment, which is a parking lot and maybe a WIC program that runs out of that or something. So anyway, so what we've been talking about with the developer is doing a land swap east and west, because the westmost piece of the property that they're looking at is bisected by a creek that runs north and south, which effectively makes everything west of the creek, less than ideally usable, whereas our piece is, shaped like that, which is also not ideal, but better than water, because in our case, you can grade and you can terrace and you can do things, whereas with the water, you got buffers, and so you're going to lose about 75 feet on each side of the creek, plus whatever's happening to the west. So anyway, so we're moving ahead with that. They've had it surveyed. I think we split the cost with them in order to get legal descriptions of whatever moves. We've looked at one potential conceptual design, which I didn't particularly like. It's not big enough. Ideally, I'd like to see them build at least 250 units, and they were only initially looking at 150 and then 180 or 190. So I'm trying to get them to think about taking that whole piece that we own and building more units to make it more profitable for them and better for me, because if it's a TAD, I need all the density per acre that I can get in terms of just property tax value. So anyway, so that's where we are with that. We've asked them to come back with a new conceptual plan that would include a separate drive to give our guys access back to the lift station instead of what they proposed, which was a access through the development. There's a possibility it's going to be gated, at least initially, or it will be designed to be gated depending on what, basically, I don't want to say this out loud, but they're going to sort of play it by ear and see how the neighborhood responds to a new development. And if the neighborhood doesn't respond well, I think they're going to gate it. Does that make sense? I don't want to get into that. But anyway, so if they do that, then we don't want to have to fool with that. If we have an emergency at the lift station and we can't get through, or there's people parked where they shouldn't be and we can't get, back to, because there's only one access point to the lift station. Because of the topo, we can't get to it from the east, west, or north. We can only get to it from south, which is the Cleghorn Anderson side. So it's sort of persnickety about how we approach it and what we do with it. Anyway, questions? That's about all I know at this point.
The expansion that you're asking them to do, is that a phase 2, or is that all part of the very beginning phase?
I think they would phase it. Yeah, I don't know that the neighborhood, or that a development in that neighborhood would absorb fast enough to just build it and hope they come. I think they would do 2 or 3 buildings, see what the absorption is, and then plan additional buildings as
So they
as
come back
feel.
to us for additional bond?
That's over my head. I don't know. I can ask Dee that, if he does a phased development, how he does the bonding piece. Because my experience with bonds is it's a one-shot thing. You don't get to ooze into those. You do the whole thing. The issuance cost is prohibitive to do it in pieces, so doesn't necessarily work great for phasing because you're sitting on it, you know, incurring that carrying cost, but I think that's the way you do it.
What effect will this have on the proposed start date? You know, the proposed start date for this was like next spring sometime. Will this
I didn't
resubmittal?
ask him about it, so I think he and the seller are both waiting on us, sorta. So, he didn't say, hey, you know, if we don't get this done by X date, that I'm gonna lose my option. In fact, the seller has actually come to see me one time, I think, just to take my temperature and see if I could verify that these guys in Alabama were really legit, and that we were really having a conversation, you know, because all he knew was what he was being told, and nothing was in writing. So, I think they're okay with the pace of what we're doing. He's not, he'll have to say something.
So they only have an option for the land that they want to swap with the city,
They have not purchased any land.
but they do have an option.
They have a contract to buy it. And we have not worked out any of the details, so where I am on another piece of this is I've got to put two things into place. I have to take to council a redevelopment plan. So that is a document that can be geared toward multiple locations and multiple tax allocation districts. But it's what is required by the redevelopment powers that were approved by the voters and approved by the state legislature, okay? So we have this ability, but it requires this document, so we've got to do that. So I'm gonna take to council a proposal to use a guy named Dan McCray to help us do that. So we're gonna put together some plan, and it's gonna include the Mirror Lake Connector area and probably Avamore, which is the development on 61 that's proposed. And then we're also getting closer to a second industrial park, which is not far from Avamore, so that may become either two TADs or one big TAD, I don't know, but it would, all three of those would be part of one redevelopment plan that would go to council. And then assuming that any of that happens, then we have to go to council. The Carroll tax assessor, the school board, and the county for each TAD, because we have to have the participation of the county and the school board for each TAD in order for the money to work. So what they have to do is say to us, yes, you can do a tax allocation district in this area, and we will contribute our increment to the bonds. So what that does is gives us like 33 mills total, which makes the thing possible. And if the school board doesn't participate, then you don't do it, right? Because that's more than half the 33, I think. And then if the county doesn't participate, probably don't do it either, right? Because it'd still only be 20-something mills, and probably the numbers wouldn't work, if we can make it work at all. I mean, we're not gonna know till we get into it.
Do you think it likely that they wouldn't participate?
We have met with both. So Chris Pike and I met with the school board about 15 or 18 months ago, and they were on board with the concept, but that was only talking about Mirror Lake Connector. And then he and I also met with the county, but unfortunately, that was Marty. We've never met with the commission, so that, now we have to start all over with Michelle and the commission to see if they're interested in participating. So, I don't know how I got started talking about that, but anyway.
You said the industrial park close to Avermore?
Yeah, we're looking at land down near your old place. Yep.
Avamore is the development between Van Wert and 61 in there.
Right, Williams Mountain and the old dairy farm.
Okay, now, that would be a separate TAD.
Right.
Does a TAD have to be contiguous geographically, or can you have a little TAD here and a little TAD there to make one bigger TAD?
I don't think you do it that way. I think you do them separately, but that's over my head again. But I'll know the answer to that before this is all over with.
Don't you think it might help if you could do a little TAD and a little TAD and combine them into a bigger TAD? Since the potential for Avamore, at least, from what I know about it, which is not a lot, would be a pretty high-density population area.
Right. Yeah, the problem with Avamore is it's significantly residential, which doesn't lend itself to a TAD. Single-family detached doesn't give you enough density per acre, but it's got a commercial, senior living component that could be good. So I don't know about that one yet. We're going to use another company to help us with that decision. All the financial part. I've only opened a development that resulted from a TAD. I've never created one. So I don't know the beginning of this thing. I've never done the process. And then the problem with Mirror Lake is threefold. One is the topo's terrible, which is why it's, after 100-something years, it's still, got trees on it. Because, you think about where it is, there's got to be something wrong with it, right? It's got water all in it. And I'm told by some of the old timers that the soil in there is awful.
Used to be a dump there, wasn't there?
And that's number 4. Number 4 is one old timer told me that when he was a teenager, that he would go there on Saturday
Shoot
with
rats.
a buddy and shoot rats because they would burn the dump every Saturday and it would make the rats run and they would go over there and shoot rats.
I'm one of those old timers.
I remember it too.
Have you done that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The trickling filter was right there next to the dump.
Say that again.
The old trickling filter was right there next to the dump.
What does that mean?
That means the sewer plant was right next to the dump.
Trickling filter.
You've never heard of a trickling
I've
filter?
never heard that expression.
That's one of the early designs of wastewater treatment. Basically, a big cylinder full of rocks with an arm that the sewage went out through and got on the rocks, and the bacteria worked on them, and then it went out the drain.
Into the creek.
Yeah, that is what it was called, secondary treatment back in the old days.
Wow.
Primary being sedimentation, secondary being the trickling filter.
Okay, I'll have to do some homework on that. I don't know that one.
Take my word for it.
I've heard stories like one guy told me that he would go there along the creek leading into Mirror Lake and could tell what color socks they were
9.
producing at where the Avante is, or next door where Olive Tree, or wherever that facility was, by what the dye in the creek, which is pretty illegal nowadays. Yeah, one of the worst things that's happened to us since I've been here is we wanted to upgrade the capacity of the north plant, which is the sewer plant from Mirror Lake there at the dam. And it's not a big facility. It does 500,000 gallons a day, and we wanted to increase it to about 800,000. And EPD came back and said, yeah, sure, you can build a bigger plant, but you have to move your discharge point. And what they've done is they've got this rule in place now that you can't discharge more than 30% of the average flow of the creek, because it's a commitment to blending, you know. And so the new discharge point would be Sweetwater and Paulding, which is 22,000 feet away, 4 miles, which means practically they said no. You can't increase the capacity because that makes the numbers not work. So we're sort of stuck with the north plant, which is not great, you know. So there's a lot of stuff like that going on that while this conversation is happening, that Cleghorn Station's function's gonna change some. And it could very well be, and I don't go around talking about this, but that old dump could kill this deal, depending on how big it is and what's left and where, you know, exactly it is.
I've thought about that myself.
Like, have you got an idea where exactly and how big and what's probably still there?
I haven't been there in a long time, Tom, but now the trickling filter was about probably 20 or 30 yards to the northeast of the dump, and the dump was on the side of an incline, so the trucks would just back up and dump it down the incline.
Toward the creek?
Yeah, and then maybe, you said once a week they'd set it on fire. I think it actually burned probably 7 days a week.
It was just a surface dump. It wasn't dug in and buried or anything like
Oh,
that.
no, this
It
was just dumped and burned. This was back in the 50s, Tom, 50s, 40s and 50s.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if he was a teenager, yeah, he's,
And it was a good place to shoot rats. Big ones.
Any more questions for Tom?
What are you asking us to do about the land swap? Just to recommend it to the city council that they act on it, or what?
no, when I came to y'all and asked y'all about increasing your footprint, one of the benefits that I saw to that was that y'all would at least have a seat at the table for everything that happened in there now, right? Whereas otherwise, y'all wouldn't have had any say. I'm not sure that you can, what you do with that say, but at least we can have these conversations every time something is proposed, and y'all get this, at least have an opinion about, yeah, we like that, we don't like that, that's good for downtown, that's not good for downtown. And one of the questions that I think or subjects that you're gonna talk about is cannibalizing downtown. So just be thinking about that. When we build a road out there, we could, if we build it in such a way that it makes our current downtown businesses want to relocate, or it makes things come in there that draw business away from the current downtown, that's not the goal. So we have to be careful, and that was one of the reasons I thought y'all needed to be part of this, is
So we need to
the
be
goal is to have
proactive
a
on
bigger,
zoning.
better one. Say it again.
We need to be proactive on zoning that area to make sure that we don't pull out
I don't know about
restaurants.
zoning, but like, one thing that I think we need to do is we need to go someplace, or maybe multiple places as a group, or drag somebody in here or something who's done something similar, where they had a linear railroad downtown like ours, and then they did something adjacent to it, to talk to them about how they managed the health of the old part while they were adding the new part, because I've not done it. But I see the danger potentially. So I'm sure somebody, there's cities in Georgia that have done it. We just got to go figure out which ones that are. Like places like Ackworth and Woodstock that have linear railroad downtowns like we do have expanded like in depth and length, but not really, gone off on a tangent like this one's going to do. So those are the two that I'm the most familiar with that are sort of like us, that have really, done, exceptionally well. I don't know. Y'all have lots of experience in Georgia, so you just got, collectively, we ought to be able to think of somebody that we can go visit or talk to.
I think Norcross also has a railroad downtown.
Yep.
Went to a restaurant one there and it literally ran behind us.
Yeah, they worked somewhat. Let me think. The railroad is running north and south, sort of,
Mhm.
and they built, I guess, east and built that big public area past their city hall.
Mhm.
So yeah, but it wasn't a traditional retail downtown area that they built. Their retail area is still the old depot with the restaurant in it and the storefronts, right across the street from the railroad. Yeah, I just don't know one, but I think we need to go figure out how to do it in a way that's healthy. Learn from somebody else's mistake, maybe.
All right.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, moving on down to number 5, new business, discussion of electronic charging station for downtown. Now, whose is that one?
I put it on there.
Oh,
Oh.
absolutely.
That's right. I was like, wow, we think alike. So basically, that came up. I had a customer of mine that drove up in a Tesla, and I was very impressed. I don't know if y'all have ever had the experience of a Tesla, but that's an incredible car. But we started talking, and they asked if there was a charging station or plans for a charging station in Villa Rica. And I was like, no, why would there be? You don't see many electric cars around, but every manufacturer's coming out with electric cars. You've got Honda, Chevy, all the big manufacturers. And they talked about it as a destination. So with Tesla, you can pull up your Tesla app and it'll show you where their charging stations are. So people go to that charging station for that reason. If they're out and about, if they need to go shopping, go eat somewhere, they're going to obviously go where a charging station would be. And I would assume that would be with any electric car. So I didn't do much other than surface research. Bremen's got a charging station, Carrollton and Douglasville. West of us, other than Bremen, you go all the way to Anniston before you find a charging station. Anniston actually has a Tesla supercharging station, which is basically just a quick charge for those cars, less than 30 minutes for a full charge. Traditional charging stations take an hour and a half to fully charge a car. So if you imagine that, and I'm sure y'all have seen the charging stations in malls and things like that. You have at least two bays for that, and then multiple stations past that if you do. But if you had that, you would have a person parked there for 30 to hour and a half. And at that point, they're going to go eat, they're going to go shop, things like that. So just as a talking point, would that be something that could be considered for the future to draw someone to downtown? And with new development as it comes, if things expand over towards Mirror Lake, do we need to consider potential for that? And I'm sure there are grants, or I know there have been grants out there for programs like that to bring a station in, just to have a way to bring that and increase somebody's green ability within a city. But just as a thought, put one at the mill for the events we have there. We've got several restaurants right down here in Main Street that are close enough that you can park and charge and go and shop and eat. So just wanted to bring it up kind of as a talking point, just to getting feedback if any of y'all have seen or know much about them.
We have two in Newnan at our city hall.
Okay.
And we actually have people that use them.
They are at City Hall in Newnan.
Back parking lot at City Hall.
Did y'all-
Also have electric car.
Did
Hybrid.
you get a grant for that?
I'm not sure, was it through my department, but we do have the hybrid car, so we charge it, other people charge it, and they do go downtown and put it on.
Do you know if they charge for that, or is it
Those
free?
are free.
Okay. Because you have that option. You have a free one. You have a kind of a prepaid program. Tesla, with their superchargers, they actually, if you buy a high enough priced card, they include charging at all their super stations for that, included with the price of the car. So there are different ways to look at it, but I know a lot of cities have it, and we're getting close to the line towards Alabama, and you got a big jump there. I think the one in Bremen is at a hotel, if I'm not mistaken. Looking at it on the map, I didn't go physically see it, but looking at it on Google, it looked like it was at one of their hotels.
Is there a way that we can check with like the Georgia Department of Transportation or somebody to see the percentage of cars that are electric?
I'm sure there is definitely data on that information. And I mean, you could judge that. I see more and more riding through as they are. I've seen 3 Teslas around town, and I know one actually lives here. So, I mean, people charge them at home, and we're in a small enough community that, you're not going to be gone the 300 miles to need a charge. But someone passing through from Atlanta, if they get caught in traffic and their battery starts to come down and they're passing through Villa Rica, I need a charge. Anniston's my next option, or Bremen, I guess. It might be an option to draw somebody off the interstate. So, but yeah, I can do some more research on it if that's beneficial. Grant options, I don't know. I didn't know basically I just wanted to bring it up as a talking point. And I don't mind looking into more information if I need.
That sounds good.
I think it's an interesting
Yeah.
concept. I really hadn't thought about it since I'm not an electric car guy.
I never have, and until I rode in that Tesla, it was not even crossed my mind, but it's pretty neat, I will say.
How much space, physical space, does it take for a charging station? Just the space of a parking spot?
I would probably say like a handicap space, because you've got the unit in between 2 parking spaces. So not much bigger than a regular space, but I don't know.
With ours, we put it, so here's the sidewalk, and we have it in front of the space, so when you pull in, you're able to go right there. So it's just in between the curb and the sidewalk at the station, and you just put a car in, like it's like a.
What I've seen has been parking spaces, just basic parking spaces. Brookhaven has it at City Hall, Marietta has it actually in the parking garage.
Well, my thought was, even if we don't do it here at the mill in front of y'all's office, and that way you've got all the visitor information there, you're kind of in between everything you need to do for downtown. So even at that point,
Yeah, if you want to check into that, Andy.
yeah, I'll look at some different options for that.
I'll check with my city, see if we got a grant.
Okay.
All right, moving on down to consideration of facade grant for Jerry Cole, 218 West Montgomery Street. I think we had a copy in our packet. I think it got shuffled around. He had it on the same time as we had his last application, but we had to get him, he brought me a copy and he brought Janet a copy too, so I think all the work is completed. He's just wanting some money.
I've got something I want to say about our facade grant. Years ago, for the newer members of our group here, years ago, this body, the DDA, functioned as the Historic Preservation Committee of the Main Street organization as well as the DDA. And we initiated the facade grant for major structural changes for a facade. It was never intended to be maintenance, like repainting or painting windowsills or anything like that. If somebody wanted to physically change the facade itself, then we would match dollar for dollar up to $5,000, which was more than adequate for most of the buildings downtown, because most of them are like 20 feet wide, so it doesn't take, a lot of structural changes to actually make the appearance quite different. So painting maintenance was never considered part of the facade grant. And so now I understand Main Street also has a facade grant. And I don't know if it's a matching grant like the DDA's or not. Does anybody know? If
It's not a matching.
grant or-
Yeah, it's up to 2,500 exterior improvement grant, and it's not a matching.
So it's just a gift of 2,500 for,
Well, it's not a gift. I mean, it's a reimbursement for, the actual expenses. So we actually pay the vendor, so
it's
it's,
a pretty good gift.
it's,
though.
but it's not like we're just giving them money. I mean, they give us the receipts for everything, and then we
But-
pay them the receipts, pay for the receipts.
Actual expense out of their pocket is reduced by 2,500. So
Yep.
if it's a $5,000 cost, they get 25, which would be half of it. Well, I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but the DDA and Main Street both get our funds from the city. And it's taxpayer funds that goes into it. And I want to make sure that we use our funds wisely.
And let me correct you just a little bit. The grant money for Main Street does not come from the city. That's all from funds that Main Street has gotten from events and memberships and sponsorships from local businesses. None of the city funds go towards the grants.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
I mean, I sound like I'm really loud.
So this is what the DDA used to do. We used to raise all of our money for the facade grants and everything else we spent money on.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, Main Street
So-
raises all the money that's spent on the grants.
so there is a $2,500 grant, and if the DDA matches that 25, it gets it back up to the 5 where we were for structural changes, but not for painting and painting windowsills and so forth. Because that is how we always looked at a facade grant.
Well, I'm looking at the facade grant application, actually has painting listed as one of the project options. And it's got a list of things that you're going to do, and one of them is painting.
Well, this was done by the previous administration without any input from the DDA. And so it just kind of popped up as, this is the way we're gonna do it from now on. And, you know, if everybody wants to continue doing it that way, that's fine. But I would think that a property owner should shoulder a considerable amount of any upkeep on their building, if not all upkeep. Now, a facade change is something else, but the property owner is the one that gets the benefit of it in the long term. And this particular piece of property that Jerry Cole has applied for, it has since changed hands. It is no longer Jerry's. And I don't know what impact the facade grant might have had on the sale of it. I don't know if that was, you know, contingent or not. But I think we need to go ahead and act on this one like we did the last one. But going forward, I would be slow to participate in a grant where the city, through either Main Street or the DDA, is footing the entire bill for maintenance and change, if you get my drift.
Yeah, now you said this building's no longer owned by Jerry?
That's correct.
He's the applicant as the building owner, so I don't know how we can approve it if he doesn't own it.
Well, he doesn't own it
He says
anymore.
business owner, no.
Building owner,
Owner, yes.
yeah. I mean, he applied for this as the building owner. If he no longer owns it, then I don't know how we can act
Yeah,
on it.
this was about 2 months ago, and it got misplaced or something or other.
Well, like I say, I think we need to go ahead and act on it one way or the other. And since we approved a considerable facade grant for buildings just down the street from these, then I don't see anything wrong with doing it here. Kind of like a grandfathered in facade grant application, but
From here on out.
from here on out, I think we need to really look at it carefully.
On Main Streets and exterior improvement grants, we typically look at colors that they're gonna use and awning colors, you know, the swatches of material that they plan on using, and there's none of that with this. I don't even see a cost listed here, which Main Street normally requires an estimate from the contractor.
And this also requires a written quote, and I don't see a quote in here either.
Well, the way we did the original one, we required an applicant to give an artist rendering of the finished
That's
product and compare it to the present. And we would look at it, and if we agreed that it took it back as close as feasible to the original facade. Now, feasible is, you know, kind of a nebulous word, but that was what our facade grant originated from, to take it back as close as possible or feasible to the original facade. And to paint over some atrocious color with a reasonable color was part of it. Because we did have some pretty bad color scheme.
And that makes sense, but does this give you enough information to decide that? I don't see that it does.
I don't think I can tell much about it.
I can't either.
You, Carl?
I can't tell anything about it, and then there's nothing about the cost in here either.
In the past, Main Street has asked Ron Johnson about the color selections and stuff to make sure that it fits in with the new styles policy that the city's going to adopt.
Well, what part does the Historical Preservation Society have in approving a facade modification?
It depends on if it's a historical building or not, and apparently for this one, it's not.
On this side of the street, this side of the tracks,
Yeah.
this is a historical preservation
Right.
zone. The other side
Not
is
yet.
not.
Not
Yet.
yet. It was supposed to be, but it never went through. Due to some
Most of
clerical
the-
error. of it.
Most of the buildings over there would meet the criteria, except maybe for the two-story building that the Berries built. Everything else is over 50 years old over there.
Yeah, but they still need to go through all
Right.
the process.
I understand that, but I am saying that from a pure historical perspective, they would meet that particular criterion.
But even if it's not in the historical district, I mean, I agree, it needs to blend in with everything else and, have the appropriate colors and such, and
It does.
we can't tell from this whether this will or not.
I think he's already had it done.
Well, he just won't get the funding for it
What?
if we decide adverse to him tonight, then he just won't get the reimbursement. I mean, we're not really deciding whether he can do it or not, just whether he gets awarded the grant, so.
What was the amount he was asking for again?
I have no idea. It's not on here.
It's not on here, yeah.
Yeah. Sounds
Nobody
like
knows?
there's,
It's kind of hard to say.
It's hard to approve something when you
It's to an
don't,
unknown, isn't it?
yeah, we're not going to give them a blank check.
Does he need to go back and do some kind of a contest, picture showing what he's done, taking copies and before, and bring that to
I would imagine there's some pictures around like that.
Yeah. So we'll just table this one then until we get a figure from Jerry.
and then also amend his application to reflect that he's no longer the building owner, but just the applicant.
Or have the new building owner
Reapply.
reapply maybe. That might have been part of the negotiations for the purchase. I don't know, beats me. But I think we need to table it until we get it.
For figures. All right, we'll table that one.
Do we need to vote to table it?
Motion from Thiel.
Yeah.
We'll have a second.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
With what, tabling?
table it.
Yeah.
No, I'm opposed.
You're opposed. All right, moving down number 6 to public comment. Items for future agenda. And
Well, actually, in light of Bill's statements here about the facade grant application, so maybe an item for future agenda would be revisiting what our requirements are on the facade grants, discussing those at least. I don't necessarily disagree with Bill about painting, but sometimes, but maybe, well, I'll reserve this conversation for when we bring it back up, but right now, there's such a dearth of applicants, maybe it's good to give some money out, and hopefully we attract better, bigger projects, and we can then prioritize. But I think that's a discussion point we should have. Add that to the future agenda, please.
Okay, now here we're going to go on recess for this.
That's correct. We need to recess and we'll continue it till the end of the convention and visit it.
Okay, so we need to, do we have a motion? Do we have to have a
So
motion?
moved.
All right, motion to second.
Second.
All in favor? All right, so we'll go to the CBD meeting then. Meeting called to order. Consideration of minutes. Everybody taking a chance, look over the minutes from our last meeting. If so, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay,
Second.
motion to second. All in favor? All right, financial report.
Yep. There's the, our budget versus actual for the past 7 months, I guess, January through July. And we're pretty much right on track with everything. We're a little behind on tax collections at this point, only because we were just estimating at the beginning of the year, but it's really close. It's about $1,600 less than what we were estimating. But our expenses have been less as well. So we're actually have a surplus of 4282 at this point, based on the budget. So we are under budget at this point. Under budget, over budget, Tom, huh? We've got extra money, so we're under budget.
Sounds like you've outperformed it one way and underperformed it the other.
We've outperformed the budget. How about that? We're in good shape anyway.
We are ambidextrous.
Yeah. So we've got less revenues, but we've got less expenses more than that, so.
Any question for Carl? All right, moving down to old business.
Oh, and in the bank, sorry, the bank balance is, I wrote it down here somewhere. 42,171.
Carl, I do have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
On the grant down there, it
Yep.
shows we budgeted for 10,000, and
Well,
is that
we-
correct?
We actually didn't budget for 10,000. We gave a $10,000 grant
Okay.
before I had put together the budget, so then I added that into the budget. That was the Art Coalition. And so I just took it out of other things and put it in that line item.
Okay.
All right, any old business? All right, move on down to new business. Request from Clint Chance for 500 Billerica Frontier Rodeo. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. In 14 years, this is the first time I have ever, I guess, officially been asked to come before the board, and I appreciate the opportunity. If I could give you a little bit of history real quick about the event and kind of lead you into why we're here today. We started 14 years ago, the Billerica Frontiers Rodeo, the same year that we started the city started the fireworks here. We actually made a deal with the city of Billerica and was renting the V-Plex at that time, and we had the event there for 5 years. Leading up right before the 5th year, the city of Billerica was looking to obtain a piece of property that a bank had foreclosed on right there near the V-Plex, kind of in between the Ingalls property that's owned right on 61 and the V-Plex. And they were going to, the plan then was to build some soccer fields and make us an additional site to put a rodeo arena, and then where the current playground is was scheduled to go there. So anyways, the playground was built, and then the land fell through. And so we didn't have anywhere to have the rodeo, and so we moved up the road just a little bit there to the church before they had actually built and used that property. And then we moved on up to what many of you will know as the Tyson Airstrip, where we have been for the past 9 years. And so just want to give you a little history behind that as far as the event and the location and so forth. We've been featured, kind of helped put Billerica on the map. We feel like CNN Headline News contacted me one year and came out and did a cover story. I believe it was our 5th year. They did a television series at the event, the 5th year that we had the rodeo at the V-Plex. Also Small Cakes, and we know that they didn't survive in Billerica, but Small Cakes is a national branch, or it's kind of like Chick-fil-A. You can have a partnership in that company as well. And so Small Cakes recognized us as an event here in Billerica to be associated with. And then in addition to that, Coke decided to launch a brand new product with us through their Fuse, a tea product, and we were the first event in the entire nation for this actual tea product to come out, and we had to go through a rigorous process to actually be chosen for the small town event, as they have called it. So just a couple of accolades there. We've had FMX motorcycle tours that have come to the rodeo. This year we had the Team Ghost Riders, which is the Capuchin Monkeys. They've been featured at a lot of national and collegiate football games. The motocross, as you know, many times is in Atlanta, so we feel like we've been able to have some things at our event that you don't really have to go out of town to see, that otherwise you might have to go to Atlanta. One thing that we pride ourselves on, not that there's anything wrong with alcohol, but we've tried to keep true to the family atmosphere. It's an alcohol-free event. Also, we used to, obviously, when we had the event in conjunction with the city renting the property, we insured the city under our insurance umbrella policy. We continue to do that today because the city approves our signage. That's not something that we have to do, but here again, in trying to keep in good order and be professional in our event, that's something that we continue to do, is to insure the city. From the year one, we have included a lot of local schools and helping the event to be a fundraiser for them. Billerica High School soccer team has been with us all 14 years. They collect the parking donations. It's their main primary fundraiser. They've been very blessed and fortunate and thank us profusely every year. A lot of people want to give money to football and baseball, but soccer, especially 14 years ago, was not a sport that everybody just wanted to donate money to. So they've been very fortunate to be involved with us. Baseball team, the football team has done 50-50 tickets and made some money there through our events. We've given $1,000 scholarships through the years to local graduating high school seniors. We've given teachers at different schools $1,000 to help with the program. One year, Bay Springs Middle School was the only middle school in all of Carroll County that didn't have their own wrestling mat. We gave $1,000 to that helped go toward them being able to purchase their own mat. So just some good things that we feel like the event has been able to do. As far as marketing, we go all over the West Georgia community. We advertise our event in Bremen, Bowden, East Paulding, Temple, Carrollton, Buchanan, Tallapoosa, Douglasville, New Georgia. Those are just a few areas. Obviously, social media, the newspaper, websites, posters, school flyers are all different avenues that we use to advertise as well. Tourism, and I'm sure you all understand tourism, but to me it's a 50-50 split. You're looking at drawing in people through tourism, but you're also looking in a small community to keep people here. We don't want them to go to Douglasville to skate. We don't want them to go to Atlanta to do this, or a bigger city where maybe there's more activity. So to me, the tourism part is not only bringing in people that we know that we do, because we get calls every year from noon in East Alabama, all over, people wanting tickets, but the people that we feel like on the weekend, we keep them in our community and they're not going elsewhere to seek entertainment. 14 years ago, I used to meet, I think, with one or two members of the tourism board at that time. They would take the information and then make a decision and get back with me on sponsoring the event. Through the years, I think when the board had kind of changed over, I think City Council had made a decision to combine the board, the tourism in with the DDA, and I had worked with different staff members such as Christopher Pike. Through the years, that's kind of just something that we've passed along and worked, and it's worked out all 14 years. If I could go really quickly to the sponsorship, typically in years past, the tourism board had done anything from 500 to 1,500 through the years. The past couple of years before your board took over, they were doing approximately $1,000 sponsorship. And I know when Mr. Doyle approached me a couple of years ago, when you'd first taken it over, you'd approved $500. So instead of backing you down to a $500 ad, if you will, I just left it at a higher rate and just discounted it at the $500. So to give you an example, through the years, we've done everything from advertise just the tourism logo, the city of Billerica. We've advertised the Pine Mountain Gold Museum. At that time, they were really trying to kick things off and get the name out for that. So we've done that for several years. The last few years, we've advertised your Gold Rush Festival. So on our posters this year, we included the Gold Rush Festival, also Billerica, an amazing find, and then at the event itself, we advertised with 2-foot tall by 6-foot wide banners. We advertised the Gold Rush Festival and also the Pine Mountain Gold Museum, both. Our sportscaster spoke about this. You know, this event is brought to you by the Pine Mountain Gold Museum, so on and so forth. In years past, you've had the Gold Museum that came out and set up a booth. They haven't done that in the past couple of years, but that's something that's happened in the past. In addition to that, your logo was on all of our school flyers. We had approximately 10,000 flyers that we sent home through local elementary and middle school, so they were able to see your logo and all that information as well. 500 posters that we put out in the aforementioned communities that I just mentioned to you. Name mentioned on radio ads. We did B92 Country, KISS 102.7, King Country, and 98.9 Classics, which is all stations owned by Graddick Communications. And so what we do is we have only a certain tier of sponsors that are on the radio, and so you would have been every other sponsor. We typically do like 4 or 5 on each ad, and so you would be one, and then you'd be rotated off, and then the next one you would come back in. And we advertise you on those radio stations as well. And this is something that I can send to you if you'd like a copy of it. Logo and all the print ads that I talked about. Also, just went over newspapers. We've typically been on the front page of the Times-Georgian and the Villarican every year. This year is no exception. I've got a couple of copies there as well. So that's just a real quick rundown of the event itself, how it got started, how tourism has sponsored the event, and just a few examples of how we actually promote the community ahead of the event, also at the event itself. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any question for Clint?
What's the average attendance each year?
We typically average between 5,000 and 7,000 over a 2-night period. I can tell you this year our numbers were off significantly because of the rain. We still had probably 2,500 plus. This is the first year we've had rain in 9 years. This is a 14-year event. I think we had rain about the second or third year, and then we had maybe another rain year. It wasn't both nights, but we've had 9 consecutive years with no rain, so it hit us this year. So, but typically on average 5,000 to 7,000.
All right, do we have a motion to approve this application?
I got one more question.
All right.
Do you ever do a survey of tags or anything like that, or where you sell the tickets to get a real feel for the percentage that come from outside Villarica?
Yes, sir, we do. So we do have a few tickets that we take, checks, people that will write checks. If Don Rich Ford, for instance, is one of our ticket sales, if they know the customer, they'll take it. I can remember, I think New Georgia and Douglasville was a couple on there. I got some calls from East Alabama this year, from Noonan, a retired couple that wanted to come from Noonan that finds, information on the internet. I can tell you one thing that we try to do. Sometimes our sportscaster will say, who's here from Carrollton, Georgia, and you'll kind of hear people holler, who's here from another community, and then they'll go to Villarica, and then, that's the majority of the sound. But I can't give you an exact science. I can just tell you from those examples that we know we get people from out of town. Yes, sir. And I think it speaks volumes that we would have, CNN, Coke, these others, that they would have no reason to try to do something with our event if we hadn't have built it up through the years. So just the fact that they were able to find us and we weren't seeking them out, I think speaks volumes to the event.
You were talking about signage with the city.
Yes, sir.
What kind of signage are you talking about? Just your posters you put up?
No, sir. So at the event itself, we have a 2-foot tall by 6-foot wide banner, and we advertise the Pine Mountain Gold Museum. So it's got that written on it. That's on one of the bucking chutes. And then we've got the Gold Rush Festival, and then it says September the 7th. We change the date each year. That's actually 2 signage. We've got that when they drive into the event. That's on a gate beside Don Rich Ford. It's the only 2 signs. And then actually in the event itself. Another good thing about our event is it's a captured audience. So I don't want anyone to think I'm knocking the fireworks, for instance. But in other words, you might come up on the fireworks and sit on a part of the field and never see what's going on the other side of the field. Essentially, when you come into our event and sit in these stands, you have no choice but to see all of our sponsors the way they're strategically fixed. So I feel like everyone that comes to the event sees all of the signage.
Does our tourism manager have any comments about the rodeo?
I haven't attended the rodeo.
Do you get anybody at the Welcome Center asking about
I haven't.
the rodeo?
I can say this, with us having sponsored in the past, I could take, like a poster or something, doing Georgia my mind, or that would increase the attendance maybe,
do the participants in the rodeo count as heads and beds? Or are they more local than that?
If they're coming in, that's still heads and beds, that's still, hotel tax numbers coming into the city.
You have out of state people participating in it, or is
I mean, the
it?
majority of, you have very few contestants that are local. Cody Sauls is his father. Eric Sauls used to be a bull rider. Cody bull rides now, so he's an exception to the rule, but most, I would say 95% of your contestants are gonna be from out of town.
Do you have a, contract with the Holiday Inn or Concord Suites or Days Inn or one of those, lot rooms, I should say?
We don't have a contract. Through the years, we've dealt with all of them. We may call up and say, hey, can you block a section of rooms off? Or, hey, are you willing to give a special rate? And then through the years, it's always been something different. We don't necessarily every single year call and ask them to stop. A lot of our vendors, for instance, they stay at the same hotels and they know to call. I'll give you another example of Waffle House up in Villa Rica. They know me as the rodeo guy. So a few days before the event, they said, yeah, we've called in extra staff to make sure we can handle, the crowds every year that we always get after the rodeo. So I think there's a lot of economic indicators that you could pick up on that, you've got people that are here.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the $500 for the rodeo?
Yeah, I moved to approve the $500.
All right.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Clint.
I think you've got opportunity to really build it more, like get with Sharon and advertise in the welcome centers and advertise more outside the West Georgia area, try to draw more people in. Yeah.
That's the best way to benefit the city is having people come in and stay in our city. Because that's how we operate.
And I'll be happy to do that. Like I said, through the years, different staff, everybody at the board, they all have a different idea of what they want or involvement, so I'm happy to work with your staff, and I appreciate it.
No, we just want more people.
Absolutely.
We like more people at
I
everything.
like more people too, so I'm not gonna
Yep.
argue with that.
All right.
Thank you,
so
thank you,
much.
Clint.
Thank you, Clint.
All right, moving on down, consideration of advertising in the tour manual. Is that yours, Ms. Sharon?
Yes, that's me. Every year we advertise in this tour manual. It's the Atlanta Guide. We have figured out that our market is, that we're doing well in the Atlanta market, as we've seen in the last, all of our events this year. So we did a couple of advertisements in there. This is just a general ad, but we also did an ad this year in their Atlanta Now, which went way out of the downtown Atlanta area. So the early bird, normally we pay the $41.95, that's what we paid last year. But if we do it, if we can get in before August 31st, August 30th, we'll get a slight discount. So I was trying to bring us in early so we can get a discount. And
You gotta
money
do
saved
this-
is money
You gotta
saved,
do it
right?
this week then, right?
Yes.
I think $800 is more than a slight discount.
Right.
So,
I'll take it,
Mhm.
so, that's what this is. Just need y'all to say, yes, we can do
All right,
this.
do we have a motion to approve the?
I have a question.
All right.
What does the full page ad look like?
I did not bring it with me, but, it's our Visit Villa Rica. It doesn't have, like a separate event on it, because that's our general Visit Villa Rica ad. So it's the Visit Villa Rica logo, an amazing find, it's that ad. It's,
Is it a picture of downtown or a concert, or what is it?
there are pictures of, our restaurants, the amphitheater. It's just not one targeted event,
Mhm.
but there are pictures of downtown, pictures of Villa Rica. And it says like, amazing dining, amazing entertainment, amazing something else.
Mhm.
So,
Any more questions from Sharon? If not-
Sharon.
And
I
you're
guess-
able to track that people do see this and come to Villa Rica based on
I don't know a
that?
way to track that yet. It's not gonna cost us a lot of money. I do know from talking with people at the event and checking, because we have to check the IDs for alcohol. We did really well this year, pulling from Alabama, pulling from Tennessee, pulling from South Carolina, pulling from further than Stone Mountain. We pulled from Stone Mountain, Ellenwood, Lithonia. So we did really well pulling out from just from Villa Rica this year. So that's what
You folks have had a good lineup at the mill this
we
year.
have. Yeah.
A really good lineup.
Yeah, we, for the last concert, probably around 3,000 people were here. There were people
That's
everywhere.
about all it'll hold.
I know.
It was packed.
We're bursting at the seams.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing, because they stayed. You know, they ate in the restaurants before. Some of them came in early and ate in the restaurants before they came to the concert. And then they still patronize our vendors, so, I mean, it was a win-win for everybody this year.
That
Let's
worked.
hope we can keep the momentum going.
And this falls within the budget, right?
Yes.
Yep.
My question, I guess, Sharon, is how many, like, guides and periodicals are we advertising in? And what's the breakdown between, like, this one seems like it's for industry professionals. What's the breakdown versus, like, industry professional periodicals and the ones for the
This-
general public, I guess?
This is Atlanta CBB's tour manual.
Mhm.
So that's for people coming into Atlanta, not just professionals, you know?
Okay.
So that's for tourists as well,
Okay,
coming in. But we advertise in this, we advertise in the Georgia Travel Guide,
okay.
which, you know, that's all over the state. And we also attend the Perry National Fair in Perry,
Mm-hmm.
where they will give out 10,000 of those at the Georgia Travel Guide just at that event alone.
Right.
And then it's in the 12 Visitor Information Center, plus all the RVIC centers, so we're doing that. I don't know if you noticed that Court was featured,
Mhm.
one of their dishes featured
saw
in
that.
Georgia Eats. And we also do, Atlanta now is the smaller but more targeted ad that we do. They're produced by this company, by the Tour Manual.
Right.
But, so we advertised the West Georgia Jazz Festival this year, Wet Willie's, and we did the SOS Band.
Okay.
And all of our numbers were up at every one of those events.
So it sounds like 3 or 4.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
I was just curious.
What is the shelf life on this publication, like for this
This
amount
is
of
a
money?
year.
This for the whole year?
Mhm.
Oh, that's great.
Mhm.
Any more questions? If not, do I have a motion?
I thought we already had one.
You don't
Have we had a
Did we?
motion yet, Tracy? I didn't think so. We do have a motion to approve of 3656
I'll make
for
a
the manual.
motion.
Okay, motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Thank y'all.
All right, this next one's yours too, Sharon?
Yes,
All right.
uh-huh. So we had these, and I neglected to bring a sample for y'all, but we have these polyester fans, and they fold up into this little, just like this. We had about 45 left, and we sold them for $1 at the SOS Band concert, and we sold out. And they were asking for more. So we want to sell them at the Gold Rush Festival because we knew you're gonna need them.
Be hard.
Right. Previously, we paid a little over $1 for them, but I found a vendor that could give us a discount. And so they're 53 cents each. And we're gonna order 3,000, so what we don't sell at the Gold Rush Festival, which we probably will sell those out, we'll sell at the Alabama Blues Brothers concert. That should take care of that. But it's just $16.52, a little more than what Janet can sign off on. And that includes the shipping and everything, so I just wanted to get them.
Do you have an example of those?
I have one, and they're just the best thing.
Yeah, they fold up into a little thing about that big, and then
Yeah.
you can
I
pop it out.
Put it in my purse.
Yep, you can put it in your purse.
My wife has
It's
one. She loves
reusable.
it.
Or wave it?
You wave it.
You waited.
You can stand under it, it might not do much for you under it.
I had one that I had used up, and somebody came up to the table and said, I need a fan, and Vicky was like, here, it's $1. So she saw a fan that I had used pretty well, you know. I pretty much had the paint coming off, but it, you know, they wanted it, so.
I make a motion to approve it, but I recommend we sell them for more than $1.
Oh, no, we're doing $2.
$2 is good, all right.
Yes.
All right, so I make a motion we
from
approve.
Carl, to have a
Well,
second.
how much are we looking to spend?
59 cents.
1652.50.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Second.
All right, motion is second, all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
All right, public comment. Item future agenda. Executive session. A motion to adjourn this meeting
So it's adjourned.
and go back into executive session. Do we have a motion to go to executive session?
Yes.
I would have that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, it's 7:25.
So we've adjourned CVB and we're back into DDA.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Okay, and who do you want to stay, Bill?
I want the city manager to stay,
All right.
and of course, I want Tracy to stay.
Clint, we're gonna kick you out.